Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Kachina Aurora Kitchen Witchery podcast, another fabulous episode of our series, Conversational Witchcraft. And today we have Sam Belyea. He is an astrologer and a bodywork practitioner located in Tampa, Florida, with extensive experience writing, teaching, and speaking on holistic topics, which I love. Known for his daily horoscopes and instructional videos, Sam's work aims to encourage partnership with the natural forces of our world, having backgrounds in clinical herbalism, yoga, physical therapy, medical astrology, and energy work makes Sam's classes and sessions well-rounded, while his analogies and to the point teaching style both entertain and inspire. Sam, I'm so excited to have you.
Me too. This is going to be so fun.
I hope so. I hope it's fun. I never want anybody to come on this show and be like, God, that girl was so fucking boring.
Exactly.
I hope that's
nobody likes a boring podcast.
No, right? And it's funny because I was never, true moment. I was never really into podcasts, listening to podcasts. My husband listens to podcasts all the time. He watches like YouTube podcasts and stuff like that. And it wasn't until I started doing podcast interviews to promote my book, and I had like 3 people be like, you need to have a podcast. I was like, I don't know dick about running. Why not gotta add something else to my life that I need to do? And now I'm doing it and I love it. It's so like, look, I get to meet new friends all the time and I never have to put real pants on to do it. That's the beauty of podcasting, right?
Exactly.
Right. So you're down in Florida.
Yeah.
And is it like, okay, so I'm in New Hampshire and today it's like 30 degrees.
Yeah, it's like 80 over here.
I mean, that doesn't suck. It doesn't suck.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's a beautiful place to live. This year we definitely had a better election turnout with some of the major cities kind of getting on the voting bandwagon, but there are still some parts of Florida that are very much in the woods, very much not necessarily connected, and it can be a little bit wild. Like some of the Florida man stories are definitely true, but at the same time, like you're never 30 minutes away from a beach. There are so many fantastic springs and watery attractions and theme parks. It's a beautiful state regardless, and the tax laws aren't too bad either.
I lived in Orlando for a short period of time. Mm-hmm. I worked for the Mouse for a short period of time. And I loved working for Disney World. I mean, for me, it was a great experience. Not everybody has that experience. I had a great experience, but I was funny. I was interviewing Temperance Alden. Do you know Temperance? So I was just interviewing Temperance Alden, and she's down in Florida. And we were having this whole conversation about how I simply could not handle living in a place without seasons. Are you from Florida originally? Are you used to no seasons?
Right. Born and raised in Florida.
You'd be freezing your ass off right now if you were here.
Well, so it was really interesting for me because I was definitely like, I haven't moved maybe 10 minutes away from my childhood home.
Wow.
So I've really stayed super local, like in my little alcove, my little mangroves, and it's really safe and beautiful here. But my work has, over the past couple of years, gotten super international, and I've had to travel to places like Canada and places like the UK that have cold. And before I actually traveled for my first book tour, I went to visit some friends up in Michigan in February.
Oh, dear God.
And I really wanted to get a handle on how do I pack for cold? What do I need to do as like triage moments? How do you drive in the snow? Like cold crash course 101. And it was a beautiful experience. It was just absolutely hilarious to me. I couldn't stop laughing for half the trip because it was literally so cold that I sounded like I was drunk half the time because my face was frozen. And I was just slurring all over the place. And I'm like, this is great.
This is when it's so different from what you're used to, right? So like, yeah, you're like, oh my God, snow. Like, was that the first time you ever saw snow?
No, I saw snow in New York, but it didn't get cold to snow in New York. This was this was blankets of fresh snow up in Michigan. And what struck me the most was the sound, the nothingness of it.
Yes.
And that was just like, and in which culture, like a lot of our herbal medicas are from up north, a lot of the popular writers are up in the mountains or over in the UK even. And so I'm sitting here surrounded by palm trees, hibiscus, and aloe, and I'm like, where's my witchcraft? You know? But then also like they talk about seasons and they talk about the snow and they talk about the wisdom of ice and retreat and on the darkening of the night. And I'm sitting here like, it's still 80. It's still sunny. Like I can go to the beach in the middle of December, no problem. And it definitely, there were moments where I felt so disconnected from those cycles and that wheel of the year.
Absolutely. It's so funny. This just bleeds right into the conversation I was having with Temperance. And she was saying very much the similar thing and saying that for her living in Florida is learning how to adapt your witchcraft to the climate that you're in and adapt the wheel of the year to the climate that you're in. Something that I am not capable of. You know, I need to be here where I'm just simply not that evolved. I need to see the trees changing so that I know that it's fall. I need to feel the cold so I know that it's winter. And I guess that just speaks to me being, like I said, not that evolved as a witch, I guess. But I remember being in Florida and it was the day before Christmas Eve. So it's December 23rd. And my friend and I had the day off from work and we said, oh, we're going to go to the beach. And we were laying on the beach in 80-degree weather on December 23rd. And she's like, this is the best thing in the world. I'm like, this is fucking with me. Like,
exactly.
I can't, I couldn't. And especially like as a kitchen witch, like if it's 80 degrees outside, I don't want mashed potatoes.
Yeah.
And Sam, I always want mashed potatoes.
Yeah,
Like,
I completely understand.
Legit always want mashed potatoes. But here we are together. And that's the beauty of Zoom, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the things I look at and I think it's, trying to remain in gratitude and saying, this is a blessing and something I'm grateful for that has come out of the hardship of COVID is this new adaption of using Zoom, connecting with people who are far away. We never would have met. Although to be fair, Sam, you're really, really familiar to me. Have I met you somewhere? Like,
I think, did you attend Temple Fest back in 2019?
2019 Temple Fest.
The year before we had to go online due to COVID.
I don't think I was at Temple Fest. No, I was not at Temple Fest 2019, but I was at Temple Fest 2018 and a few before that. I was at the very, very first Temple Fest.
Yeah.
But not the last Temple Fest.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, one of the reasons why I wanted to jump on the podcast and chat with you a little bit was because you were literally interviewing all of my people. And so I was like, oh, she's part of the fam. This is going to be great.
I am part of the fam. I literally live. So I know that you did some of the astrology for the new Temple of Witchcraft calendar.
Oh. Such a great project.
I cannot wait to get mine. I'm so excited. So unfortunately, this episode is going to air. I'm actually airing you'll be the first episode of the new year. And that's strategic because I want to talk to you about astrology for 2022, right? But before we get there, I ordered the calendar and it's unfortunate because this is going to air and no one's going to be able to get the calendar because it was all pre-ordered. So, but what a cool project. And that's what I saw you. And I was like, oh, he's one of the fam. Like he's, but my workspace, my office where I have my company is literally, if you've been to the temple in New Hampshire, my office isn't a mile up the road. And I literally drive past the temple every single day. And I beat my horn. I'm like, beep, beep. I love you guys. And my home where I live is literally half a mile from where Temple of Witchcraft does their big rituals when we were before COVID and we were able to gather. There is a rumor that we will be gathering for Yule. I don't know.
I heard that rumor.
I'm crossing my fingers. I'm really, really hoping. But they've been very responsible and very careful, which as a member of the community, I really respect, because I don't want to go anywhere. I'm very happy. I'm very happy being in my house and not being exposed to germs. So yay. Okay. So what was that project like, working on that calendar for the temple? How did you get, first of all, how did you get involved with the temple? And second, how did you get the opportunity to do the astrology for the calendar?
So this really goes into my entire backstory with that one question. And first of all,
Yay.
can we appreciate our mugs just for 2 seconds? Like
Your mug is a mermaid.
a
I
mermaid.
love it. So
And I love your mug because that looks so harvesty and witchy to me.
this is
Oh,
my,
the pumpkin. Mm.
so I'm obviously kitchen witch, and basically my whole life and my entire aesthetic is and thank you for appreciating my mug, because I am a freak about mugs. They have to be the right size. You have to be able to hold them in a certain way. They need to feel nice. You can't buy a mug online, people. You can't.
No.
You must hold it.
No.
You have to
And
cradle it.
can I also just add on to the mug neuroses? When I walk into somebody's house and they don't have 20 different kinds of mugs from all over different places, if they have the same kind of mugs in copies of 4 or 5, I'm like, you're a psychopath. I can't.
Yeah, there's something wrong with you. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So if you could see behind me, I'm going to show you, and I don't, I've never shown this. So behind me, this is my hutch. This is my own personal. So
It's
I
gorgeous.
have my pumpkin mugs. I have 2 of this kind. And then I have 2 other ones that are similar, but the style is the color is completely different. And then I have these mugs.
Yeah, those are
okay. No,
yeah.
these are, look at this.
It is a full
I mean,
great. Oh, and the little vine spiral.
I can't with it, but it doesn't hold enough coffee. I'm just going to be honest. I could drink like 14 of these, right? That's not enough, but love it. Love it. And every season my mugs change out.
Yes.
So thank you for appreciating my mug neuroses.
Oh, of course.
My partner thinks I'm insane, and he'll always be like, he's going to make me a cup of tea. He'll be like, what mug do you want, honey? I'm like, oh, thank you. Thank you so much for respecting my neuroses.
Yeah.
I love it.
Mugs are just mini cauldrons. Every sip is an act of magic.
Thank you. Can I write that to every sip is an act of magic? Spoiler alert, I'm coming out with my own line of coffee. And
Shut up.
Yeah. And I'm totally going to write that on the package.
Please.
Oh my God. I'll be like, credit Sam Belyea.
There you go.
Sam Belyea. Yay. Belyea. Belyea. I'm sorry. I'm going to get it. I'm going to get it.
When people ask me, they're like, how do you pronounce your last name? And they're like, where's that from? And I'm like, well, technically it's French Canadian, but nobody in my family is from France or Canada. Right. And we don't speak anything. I'm like, what are you? I'm like, I'm white. That's it. That's it. White bread on white bread.
So, okay, let's get back on track.
Right, of course.
Okay. So I totally want to know about your backstory. So you could start at the beginning, or you could start at the temple and work your way backwards.
Well, the two are very connected. So growing up in South Tampa, there was a metaphysical shop called Angel Heart New Age Gifts. Mm-hmm. And when I was in high school, I was getting into my physical therapy program through their medical magnet. And so I was taking a lot of advanced anatomy and dissection labs and working with internships at various clinics and really studying some of the hardcore like rehab medicine for musculoskeletal stuff. And I wanted to soften that, and I wanted to study more of the spiritual stuff because that's where kind of my heart was. And so I decided through different people who had studied Reiki to go study Reiki. And so I looked at Reiki classes, and this shop was holding this class. So I walked in, I literally walked about 45 minutes from my house, because I didn't drive then, into this metaphysical shop, soaked in sweat because it was Florida summer.
Oh God.
And this little teenager with a little backpack trying to escape their white cis het Christian parents, trying to explore the etheric and the occult. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'm here to take your Reiki class. Can I literally pay you in cash that I get from dog sitting to take this class? And they took so much pity on me. It was really, looking back, it was the most adorable thing ever. Yeah. And so at that same time, I was hanging out at the shop so much, I was privy to my first bout of retail drama where one of their front desk people literally left in the middle of the night. And they were like, we're hiring do you want to take a crack at it? So my first official job was working at a metaphysical shop at 16.
So
And
you're
that
like,
is like,
you're like, I hang out in this place all the time. They're like, we'll pay you to hang out here. And you're like,
the dream
fuck
job,
yes.
the dream job. And at that point, I had no idea what money was. So I was
Right.
like, I was so middle class and so supported. Like I wasn't cashing my checks. I was literally just playing with the herbs and making candles and reading books and drawing up charts for the readers' clients. And it was such a great experience for young metaphysical me. But one of the workshops that we held was Christopher's W3 Shamanic Intensive.
Right.
And having zero witchcraft experience whatsoever, I took the W3 workshop. Yeah.
W3 is like the hardest workshop. It's the one used to weed out the weak.
Yeah.
Or so I
learned
heard.
That. It was not a pleasant, but it was a totally appropriate introduction because of how watery I am and how much of the work that I do in the subconscious. It was just a perfect introduction.
Mm-hmm.
So I was fangirling over this professional witch the whole time, and just soaking up as much as I possibly could. And I would read the books and do the practices on my own, and then eventually, when I was early 20s, I started taking W1 online for the first time and kind of made it official. And just since then, every year I've been registering for the next class. We had to take a gap year or two in order for them to synchronize classes for the W5. So I'm halfway through W5 right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just been one of the most amazing experiences. I went to my first Temple Fest in 2019 after Christopher kept telling me, you got to meet these people, you got to come up, they're going to love you. I'm like,
yep.
I don't know, traveling is so weird. And then that year, lo and behold, I'm literally doing 2 book tours internationally, went to Temple Fest, went to my first astrological conference. It was just such a whirlwind. And my career has really opened up since I've kind of come forward and out of the broom closet and merged some of the metaphysical and the physical work that I do with the body work. It's just been a lovely kind of marriage. And while I was at the metaphysical shop, it was very much like a Harry Potter sorting hat experience, because they kept throwing these books at me like, try this form of magic, try that form of magic, try this, try that, try this. And of course, the herbal stuff was really wonderful for me to get into, and I adored that. But what really got me was Benjamin Webster's Astrology 101 book. I opened that book and it was literally like the words from the book leached into my skin.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, this is mine. I don't know what this is, but this is me. And I knew it. It was instant recall. And I tried to put it down, picked it back up, would always do reading for friends and family. And then as I started to talk more publicly about my magical experience, I started doing the daily horoscopes. And that's been my ritual for the longest time, kind of looking at the stars, where they're at, what transits are going to affect my natal chart, and dissecting the sky from a magical perspective. And then I started doing the horoscopes, and everybody's looking at me after 12 years of bodywork practice, like, where the fuck did this come from?
Yeah.
Because after the metaphysics of my teenage years, when I went into business as a massage therapist, I really tried to be as physical therapy oriented as possible, as muscle and tissue and bone and really anatomically savvy, because I thought that if you went into pain management, you would be successful. And nobody in pain management wants to talk about the fluff stuff. That was what I perceived at the beginning. And as my career evolved and I sort of relaxed over the next decade into talking about the subtleties of the body and working with all the things that I had learned but kind of shut away, astrology and medical astrology started to become more and more of my practice, to the point where I was being asked to do readings more frequently. I was asked to be more public with my astrology. The horoscopes came forward. And then luckily enough for me, Chris Morris, who was originally supposed to do the astrology for the calendar. Chris runs several of the astrology classes and the pilgrimage for the pilgrims class for the temple. He's a fabulous astrologer, and he's presented at Temple Fest as well. Unfortunately, he was not able to do the transcription for the dates and stuff. So Christopher's like, I know this is a lot, but would you consider doing this? I was like, this is literally what I do every morning anyway, so let's just bang it out. And it took me a couple of weeks, but I had a year's worth of data just because this is the language that I speak. And it really was such a rejuvenating practice for me to look ahead, look at the full moon, new moon cycles, and help the temple integrate this into the calendar. Because I know that astrology isn't everybody's cup of tea, and I know that it can be really sciencey and really kind of outrageous to fall down the rabbit hole of the stars. But it was such a healing and heartfelt experience to be able to contribute what I love, my form of magic, to the calendar.
Just what a great story. And I'm sure there's so much more, there's so much more involved in that and your journey. And I love that you just kind of gave us the Cliff Notes version of your whole life in like 5 minutes.
Right.
But I'll first, there's a handful of things in there that I want to unpack. First and foremost, okay, Christopher Penczak, like, sure. How do you not, I imagine you as that 16-year-old kid, I imagine you going in there and just being like, oh my God. And I try to tell him all the time, I'm like, Christopher, do you realize you are the Christopher Penczak? And he's like, yeah, no, shut up. And I'm like, dude, you're the guy, like you are the guy, and the nicest, most wonderful person. And he has a way of seeing something in someone and being able to pull it out of them in the most gentle, mentory, no pressury, and you blossom like a flower when he sees that in you and pulls it out of you. So I'm so glad that you found that path and it collided, because he really is one of the best human beings on the planet. Let's just put that out there, because he is. And I want to talk a little bit about your medical background and how you were talking about the physicality of things, the biology, and how important that is. I think oftentimes, as someone who has been on the receiving end of both energy healing and physical healing, like I see physical therapist, I see massage therapist. My body is a legit train wreck, because I'm very hard on it, and I have been hard on it for a long time. So everything hurts pretty much all the time. And I'm not into like taking a lot of ibuprofen, although sometimes I have to, sometimes you have no choice. But I think oftentimes those two worlds are diametrically opposed. You can't find an energy practitioner who also understands medical stuff, and you can't find a medical practitioner who gives any weight to the energy stuff. And when and if you can find a practitioner who can do both, it's like the holy grail. Oh my goodness, thank God, thank all the gods, because we are not just flesh and bone, and we are not just spirit, right? We are both of these things working together at all times. So that in and of itself, that you do that, and that you have found a way to incorporate that, is huge and amazing. And I don't know very many people who are doing it. Now, astrology. As I said before we began recording, I know literal dick about astrology. I know a lot about dick. I don't know a lot about astrology. Okay. So just going to put that out there. I feel like I can talk with you on that level, Sam.
Yeah. Awesome.
I don't feel like I have to be shy about that. But medical astrology, this is a term I've not heard. This is something I'm really interested in. Can you explain to me, as if I don't know anything about astrology, what does that mean? And can you give an example of how you would interact with a client, for lack of a better term, in this vein?
Yeah. So everybody's familiar with the idea of astrology as being the location of the planets at the time that you were born, the natal chart, and taking a snapshot of that and looking at that as a blueprint of the person, right? A good astrology session should be the astrologer kind of walking you through and giving you a tour of your own house, reminding you of who you are, because the planets and their assigned definitions bless the spirit at the time of birth. And we even say we choose our birthdays and times to align us with the particular skills and planetary energies or detriments that are required for us to go through our journey and learn the most out of our experience, to squeeze the juice out of it this go around. Medical astrology is using those exact same planetary sign house aspect combinations, but looking at it from a physical lens. So instead of looking at the signs as a combination of element, of mode, and of polarity, instead of looking at the houses as areas of life, instead of looking at the planets as energetics that are present within our personality, we look at all of those as body parts and body systems and how they are interacting together. So as an example, Mars and the Sun are currently both in Scorpio. Scorpio, you might know as the fixed water sign that is yin or passive in nature. Scorpio is known for its ability to hide, for its hypersensitivity, for its fascination with all things dark, gothic, and the underworld. The classic Scorpio interpretation of death, sex, and taxes, definitely applies to that fixed water energy. But we also respect in medical astrology that the metaphysical mirrors the physical, and that Scorpio also rules the caves of the body, specifically the colon, the reproductive areas, the sinus, and the bladder. And depending on what's happening in Scorpio for you, what's happening in Scorpio in the stars at the current time, we can look at the same life transits, which we would analyze from a metaphysical perspective, as body transits, and how the different circulation or energy systems are integrating with the stars, and use astrology to understand more about why your body may be breaking down at a particular time, why certain symptoms are manifesting. And a great example of this is a client that I just spoke with the other day. When you have a medical transit, it's very much like somebody flicks on a light switch, and no matter what remediation you try, the body does not respond because the transit is energetic in nature. And there's always accountability that needs to happen, in astrology, physically or metaphysically. But when you're hit with an astrology transit, it can be one of those moments of forced reflection from a physical perspective. And that could be your hip going out of alignment. And no matter how many chiropractic appointments you go to, no matter how much yoga you do, no matter how many herbs you take, the hip just won't move on until the planet moves on, until the transit finishes. And we can then use astrology to say, here's the timeline of the illness based on when it occurred. Here are maybe some of the metaphysical lessons that are underpinning that physical illness, and how we can write out those transits and work with the stars instead of saying, oh, I'm broken, I'll never get better, or this is just my luck, and sweeping the meaning of it underneath the rug.
So it's really about being able to identify what's going on alignment wise planetarily and how that affects the physical body, and then aligning your energetic body to for understanding,
Right.
and awareness. Because my opinion is, when it comes to things like wellness, whether it's physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, awareness is the first step in healing. You have to understand you have, an inner child issue related to this thing that happened with your uncle one time, so that you can identify it, become aware of it, work through it, and heal it. You can't do that if you don't know it exists. And a lot of times we don't know these things exist. So this is very, very interesting. And I'm going to be like super honest with you, Sam. This is something you're opening my mind to a lot of things here. This is not a world or practice that I even dabble in, besides the fact that I'm a Scorpio. And from what I know, what little bit I know about women that are Scorpios, I'm pretty exactly that. But that's all I really know. I would never say that I know anything about astrology. But it's very, very interesting, because as you talk about these things, it's impossible not to start thinking about your own stuff and go, geez, well, what is where, and what is how, and do I have an ailment like that? Now, do you then like you said, you're waiting for this planet to, you use the word transit. So I think,
Mhm.
I believe that word means this is the position that it's in right now as it's moving,
Mhm.
right? Because nothing is stagnant, nothing
Right.
stays where it is. Everything is moving, rotating. So in this transit, things are moving, and it takes that amount of time for this particular ailment in many cases to move on as well. What do you do if you see a client, or have you ever seen a client where that's not moving, or this thing it's something you're going to have forever? Is a possibility, or do you then recommend energy? Do you recommend doctors? How do you help that person to the next level of healing?
Yeah. As an example, I have several friends who have had children.
Mm,
And when I look at their natal charts, one of their big questions is, will they be happy and healthy? Obviously. And it's so interesting to me how I'll listen back to those recordings and I'll be like, these are the most sensitive body systems. These are the areas of symptoms to watch. This is the progression of symptoms in the body that we need to trace back to the original body system and nourish that part, and give that kind of breakdown of how to feed their unique body based on their astrology. But then maybe the child is born with different medical conditions that are lifelong, that astrology doesn't necessarily have a name or a label for, but instead
mm,
we understand that from a spiritual perspective, every body is perfect, even if that body may have extreme amounts of pain or deformity, or the person who's in that body feels like they are not correctly in that body. It is then up to astrology to provide reflection points,
mm,
to provide avenues of exploration, to give an understanding and acceptance of pressure points that can be mediated, things that can be worked on, but also coming to terms with and understanding the meaning behind certain issues that will not move, and how that may play into the life lessons of what we would call the native, or the person whose chart we're kind of running. And that can be super difficult discussions, but as medical astrology goes, it's always important to be super compassionate, especially when you're at that rock and a hard
yeah.
place with any particular symptom, whether it's new or whether it's been with you your whole life.
Yeah.
Like as an example, in my chart, I have several digestive placements. And although I've gotten to a point where a majority of them are all right and they're not killing me like they were, it's always a sore spot, always. And I
Yeah.
always occasionally, with free will, choose to fuck up my body,
Right.
because life is worth living and you should have that wine or that piece of cake or whatever. Like, society shouldn't make you feel guilty for wanting to have wonderful things around you, new experiences that may pop you out of alignment but are totally worth it, you
Right,
know.
right, right.
Um,
Right, because you can't stay in alignment all the time. I mean,
exactly.
because everything is about balance. So
Mhm.
if you feel deprived, you're not balanced, right? If you feel like you're being denied, you're not balanced. I want to go back to something you said
Yeah.
that I like even wrote a note because it was very interesting. And you said that when you look at the natal chart, and it's, basically looking at, basically walking around your own house and pointing things out to
Mhm.
you and reminding you. And in some cases, we believe that the spirit chooses this time and place,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Can we expand on that a little bit?
Sure.
Because there are schools of thought spiritually that say not only do we choose this particular time and this particular day, but that we choose these particular parents, and that
Oh
we
yeah.
choose this particular hardship. And that's an idea of, radical forgiveness, or radical acceptance.
Mhm.
Like maybe you grew up in a really bad home, maybe you grew up in the wrong body, whatever these situations are. Um, and that accepting that something in my spirit chose this for the lessons, for the hardships, so that in the next life I have learned from them and then can come back. And again, I'm not saying that this is true or that I 100% believe it. These are speculations. And obviously no one wants to say, never being in an abusive situation or never having hardship like that, or I'm not saying that's good by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just posing this question. Is there anything in astrology that would help us to understand or accept these things that maybe fucking suck? And I just be like super honest with you, in my own life, I've been in therapy for like 150 years and all to deal with the same issue over and over and over again. And I think, why in the world did I choose? If that's true, why would my spirit choose to put me in this situation?
Right.
And then when you step back and you get into radical forgiveness, you go, oh, well, maybe it was because, so this person could be my father. So everything else sucks, but this person was supposed to be my father, and my spirit knew that. So it put me in this situation so that I could have him, even though the rest of it sucks. Is there anything in astrology that helps us to understand or align or accept those things?
Yeah, totally. From a stepped back point of view, I love to use the drama analogy. So sometimes even when I write my horoscopes, I'll say this is a soap opera day. Like there's just so much stuff happening in the planets. Like it's impossible to catalog all of the slaps and all of the, somebody is somebody's sister type moments that
the telenovela
concoct. Right, exactly.
Right.
In one day, let alone a life. But sometimes I'll describe some of these experiences, and especially when I'm talking to parents about their children. I had a client the other day who was like, so why does my child hate me so much? And yeah, it was such a crazy moment. And because we got permission from the child, who was over 18, to review their chart in the context of the reading, the fourth house of family was extremely afflicted in the chart. And so I was like, honey, you could have been the perfect parent and they would have still hated you. It wasn't about you. And that was earth shattering to have astrology validate that experience. But then here's the thing, like, I totally agree with you. And I was having this discussion with myself the other day. I was like, astrology is not permission for people to do terrible shit to you.
Correct.
Radical forgiveness is great until you are faced with the demons of demons, and that is such a dark night of the soul moment. And in the heat of that just boiling rage and sorrow and all of those terrible feelings, there is no excuse for somebody taking advantage of you.
100%. And it doesn't give permission, for you to just go, oh, it's just in my chart. Right. That's a cop out. That's a cop out.
That is a cop out. And we need to be aware that spirituality has a very love and light way of pulling us out of the shadow. And sometimes it's about harboring that resentment until it is appropriate, right? And so it's not necessarily like, I am not enlightened unless I forgive this person. Like, no, bitch, you got hurt.
Right.
Like you got your butt whooped by that experience. And that is not okay. But what astrology can do is, instead of navigating that journey alone and isolated and potentially blaming yourself, it allows us to become empowered by the experience. And that is the shift, because it's one thing to be rode hard and put away wet by life, but it is another thing to say, I have the strength to get back up again.
Yes.
And astrology, I think, can help us do that more so. I have regular clients. I've read for almost every kind of therapist at this point, and they say the same thing. They're like, if you can tell me what you just told me without knowing me, I don't understand why we're not teaching this in therapy school. And
because you have an understanding of behavior and patterns
Right.
Patterns, right? I
Mhm.
think that's a thing that someone like myself who's not familiar doesn't, again, knowingly know anything about astrology, with the exception of the fabulous uh, horoscopes that I've been reading of late by you, my friend. Um, but understanding patterns, your own patterns, why you repeat these patterns,
Yep.
and again, finding the empowerment in, oh, I see it coming. I see it coming, or I
Right.
know it's going to happen. So I'm going to take responsibility and I'm going to change it, or I'm going
Right.
to be prepared for it. I'm going to dig in a little bit, right? That's the power of what you're talking about.
Yeah, and this is a great example of how astrology can be practical from a modern witchcraft perspective. Like, we're always talking about the wheel of the year, but very few witches respect that the wheel of the year revolves around the sun's cycle through the signs.
Yep.
And the equinoxes and fire ceremonies throughout the year are based on solar transition. So if every year when the sun moves into Sagittarius, you just get down in the dumps and you have no idea why, but then the minute that it moves into Capricorn, you're like, everything's fine. It
Mm-hmm.
might be a good idea to investigate why that dip occurs every single year and what that pocket of the sky is holding for you.
That blows my mind. It blows my mind, right? Because as you're talking about it, you think about these people. Like, I know people that have seasonal affective disorder, right? So
Yeah.
the minute the daylight savings and all of that, and the nights get longer. I'm up here in New England, okay? So, I mean, it's dark. It'll be dark in an hour, you know.
Yeah.
And I don't have a problem with that, but some people, they start to get really depressed and they start to get really sad. And I know that there's medical parts of that, right? Serotonin and dopamine and all of those things. Gotcha. No problem. But there is this other blanket on top of that. As you said, these pockets of the sky and the way things turn through the universe, that because we are spiritual beings, we are inherently connected to, and being connected to these cycles based on when and where you were born in relationship to the sun, as you said, the wheel of the year being focused on the sun. It just blows my mind. For many years, I feel like I broke the cycle, and I like want to knock on everything wood because I don't want it to repeat. For many years, I would have some sort of upheaval in October and some sort of upheaval in February every year for like 10 years. And I would see it coming, and I'll be like, well, I don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to be. And I shifted my perspective. And again, I don't know if it has anything to do with my chart, but it was always the same kind of upheaval at the same time of year. And it was always like big shit, right? It's like the death of my father, and then a flood in my basement, and like all these things that make you go, oh my God, it can't go on. It can't.
Here's what's hilarious about that. So it's late February then?
It's either, no, it was always mid-October, early February, always.
So what's fascinating about that is, especially as we move into Pisces season, when we get mid to late February into March, and then mid-October is obviously Scorpio season. So it's the water signs that are triggering that aspect. And you literally use the term flooded. And so we look at that, and we look at the water energies rising at that time, and we look at the emotional equivalent of what's happening at that time, and we analyze the houses that hold that water energy for you. And we just start to cycle through all of these archetypes and just be like, how can we not take the back seat?
Okay, you have to stop because you're freaking me out a little bit. Freaking me out a little bit because my dad's Pisces.
Oh, for sure. Right.
Okay. Just freak me out a little bit because you said the houses that hold that water for me. Okay. This is not about me, Sam. It's about you. Okay. It's about you.
Sorry.
It's about you.
You should try hanging out with me at a bar after I've had a couple drinks.
Oh my God. Let's do it.
Oh.
Let's do it. We'll talk about astrology and mugs.
Yeah.
And
we will bring our mugs to the bar and be like,
and fill them with wine.
Yes.
Just gonna have just get a mug of Chardonnay. Thanks.
Right.
I'm not above that. I'm not above that. No. Okay. So you're blowing my fucking mind. I'm so into what you're saying. I can't. Okay, so we're going to take like a 2-second break so we can hear from our fabulous sponsors. And when we come back, we're going to talk about your new projects, what you're working on, what we can expect to see from you coming soon. We'll be right back. And we don't actually take a break. Right. We just say we're going to take a break, unless you need a break. Do you need a break? Do you need like, no, you're good. You're good. Okay, he's good. Okay. You ready? We're going to come back.
Sounds good.
I just love the power of editing. And here's what I'm going to say, like, to my amazing producer, Corey, this one's for you. Because he listens to the whole thing and then he has to cut it up. So right. I'm sure he loves when I bullshit like this. Okay. And you're ready. And we are back with the amazing Sam Belyea. And we're talking astrology, and he's literally blowing my fucking mind, you guys. Like I said in the beginning, I don't know anything about astrology. And now I am dying to get a reading from you. Like dying. I know I've had a couple of people offer to give me a reading to pull my chart. Christopher offered to pull my chart. And I was like, okay. And he's like, I'll do it for pasta fagioli. If you make me pasta fagioli, I will pull your chart for you. And I was like, I can arrange that. I can make that happen. Sure. Yeah. And yet all these years have passed and I've not made him pasta fagioli. And I'm a terrible friend. I'm a terrible friend. Every time I make a batch of pasta fagioli, I have the intention of dropping off a big batch of it on his front stoop. And then I eat all of it before I can get it to him. So sorry, Christopher. But yeah, you're blowing my mind because the medical aspect of it, listen, magic is science and science is magic, right? Everything is connected, and we've proven it over and over and over again. You know, when you talk about vibration and you talk about energy and you talk about astrology and all of these things and how they fit together, we make things happen with our minds, with our intentions. You know, we are powerful beings spiritually and energetically. So everything makes sense to me. And when you come in here and you are melding medical science with the science of astrology, and it is a science. Let's be fair. You're talking about star charts and positioning of planets, and that's legit science. Like that's above my education level, if I'm being quite honest. So you're blowing my mind. So I want to know, tell us about, you said in you dropped a little bit about how you're doing, you're writing your second book. Can you give us any information about the second book and how it relates to your first, if at all?
Yeah. So the first and second book, it's for all of my writers out there. This one's for you. And my first one was literally just so quick. It fell out of me. I didn't even know I was pregnant. And I really sat down because I had so much to say. And in 4 months, I had the first book and ran it through publishing and voila, into the universe. It's taken me like 2-3 years of just grinding for the second one. But it's on the more bodywork side of my practice. So the first book was Foot Reading, a reflexology primer on foot assessment, which is another ology that I'm good at. This time looking at, it's foot reading and reflexology is very similar to astrology. It's about looking at the microcosm and seeing the macrocosm. It's about being super specific and learning your definitions and learning logistics and placement and learning when things don't look right or when they look different and lining that up with the physical. And so the second book that's about to come out is the advanced foot reading work, which focuses more on the consultative aspect of the work, talking about the elements and working with rehabilitation methods of remedying diet and movement and mental emotional state and how and why and when to consult and investigating different forms of assessment like tongue assessment, pulse assessment, eye assessment, and really taking, taking the idea of like, if the foot can mirror the body and the hands can mirror the body and the face can mirror the body and the ears can mirror the body, there are other traditions like Ayurveda and traditional Chinese medicine that talk about additional methods of assessing and working with somebody to understand, what is the dysfunction here? And it's the same thing that I do with medical astrology. It's just looking at a chart instead of a tongue, instead of a pulse, instead of the color of their skin, if it's blotchy, if it's calloused, if it's dry, where are the lines, where are the bone deformations, and how does that ripple through the body?
I can't even imagine what it's like to be in your head. Like you must, like, it must be. Now I'm like, if I ever meet you in person, it'd be totally intimidating. I'd be like, he's reading my skin. He's going to know what I ate for breakfast the minute he looks at my hands. Like that's right. It's super, that's intimidating, dude. Like, fuck.
It's super. And so like, as a Scorpio, you'll appreciate this. I have a Scorpio rising, which is conjoining Pluto. So I have that super Scorpio energy. And one of the things that we are assigned astrologically is what's known as the piercing gaze. And when we look at somebody for too long, we get into them in a way that makes them viscerally uncomfortable, because Scorpios have a way of piercing defenses.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't.
Right. No, nothing like that.
You're freaking me out, dude. Okay.
So that's kind of what I do with the body. Like, in order to be a good practitioner, your job, I tell my students this all the time. I'm like, you need to know more about the person in front of you than they know about themselves before they open their mouth. You need to study what they're dressing, the way that they walk. Are they wearing perfume? What kinds? Do they have a limp? Are they leaning to one side? Is one of their sides of their face different than the other? What shoulder do they put their bag on? What is the tone of their voice when they speak? Do they have sorrow behind their words? Like, all of this layers of assessment that we're talking about. And it doesn't stop with foot reading. We can really take that and apply that to astrology or divination or any form of kind of art science combo, where we're using our intuitive abilities to pierce the veil and to really make sure that for the highest good, we are using our skills of assessment to kind of make sure that our clients don't bullshit us, and to make sure that we're delivering the most accurate information possible.
That, I mean, I'm kind of blown away by that. Oftentimes, especially in our community and in the witchcraft and in the pagan community, people are they're reading others energetically only, and they're getting message from spirit, and those things can be a little bit muddled, and they're not 100% sure what they mean. And your reading is not what would typically be called intuitive.
Right.
It is scientific, and you are looking at the actual physical body to understand what's going on in the mind and spirit, and what's going on in the body.
And here's the thing. So like, I have my sun and my moon in Cancer, and then Scorpio rising, extremely watery placements. Like, me as a child was just a walking ocean. Like, that's all that I was, crying at the drop of a hat, super empathetic, and not like I'm an empath kind of way. It was like I was pulling thoughts out of people's heads and pushing and pulling their emotions before I knew what I was doing, which made me super dangerous, which made me super sick, which made me like go down several rabbit holes. And why witchcraft was really the thing that helped me to ground all of this through practice, through study, through exercises, through formalized acknowledgement, accepting the fact that this was going on and that I did have power and control over it. But when I started getting all of these intuitive sensations during my body work, I had no language to not come across as a crazy person. And so when I used my intuition, and when I saw things or felt things, it was so much easier for me to say, let me take that information and find something to validate it in the body. Or with astrology, let me take that information and find some place to validate it in the chart. Now, when it comes to the hyper intuitive, like mediumship, and Danielle and I have talked about this several times. Her book is
She's
just
the
absolutely
best.
She's amazing.
He's mentioning Danielle Dion. We love her to pieces, itty bitty pieces.
Mediumship.
She's just
Magical Mediumship.
Magical Mediumship is the name of her book.
Yeah.
Yes.
And she actually was one of my anchors when I was starting to develop mediumship as an extension of all of the work that I was doing. And there are moments where I just kind of have to lay it all down and be like, so somebody's here, let's talk about it. But when it comes to the assessment and the reading, I always try to give some sort of evidence, not necessarily just this is what I'm intuiting, this is what I'm feeling, because I live that day to day. So I want to make sure that I'm not crazy. And then I also want to make sure that the client understands where I'm pulling that information from. And that could be, as an example, I had a client who I was doing an astrology reading with, and I'm like, I'm getting distracted because I'm feeling the entrance of somebody, and I'm like, okay, look, she's got a muumuu on with purple violets, and she's got rollers in her hair, she's smoking a cigarette, and she has a mug that says "I love mom," but it's chipped on one side, and she's like, holy fucking shit. And it's that type of stuff where it's really about taking these spiritual practices and giving them groundedness, giving them as much validation and as much science to complement the art, because it is so esoteric. And I love that space, but that's not always safe for clients to rely on. But also for us as practitioners, we can use that as a severe crutch.
I 100% agree with you. 100% agree with you. And I like, again, things I am a kitchen witch. Okay. I am a kitchen witch. That's where I live. That's the space I'm in. I'm very earthy. I'm not esoteric. I'm not a psychic. I'm not, I'm obviously we all have psychic stuff,
Right.
but I would never say I'm a psychic. I would never say I'm a medium. Obviously we've established how good I am at astrology. But for me, when I go for a reading or want guidance or healing, as you were talking about before, in the physical body, just bringing it full circle, we are all of these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anything that is solid for me in my life is so much easier for me to resonate with. Anything that's grounded in the reality of things. And I think too, not to change the subject, not to veer in a certain direction, but right now, specifically in our world in this time, there's so much that is speculative. There's so much misinformation. There's so much that is a fucking joke that we're all, especially now, I think, searching for something tangible,
right?
Leaning into science, leaning into reality, leaning into truth, and going, okay, this is real. I can pick this up. I can hold it. This is a mug. Right? Okay. I know that's what this is. And if I needed to prove it to you, I could show you this is a mug because you could hold it. Right. Mm-hmm. So bringing that gravity to readings and spiritual stuff and intuition, I think is especially important right now in the world the way it is. Would you agree?
I totally agree. And this is why I love the temple's trainings and their level system of 1 through 5 and beyond, because it really does hammer home the essential skills for self-care, the essential practical understanding of what makes a spell, what makes a ritual, who are these deities. It really hammers home, this is how you journey, this is how you journey safely, this is how you do the work of the unconscious stuff that you don't normally look at. These are the structures of the Abrahamic religions that have a lot of our metaphysical witchcraft lore in their roots. Like, it's so beautifully oriented to be like, this is the magic you can hold. This is what you can do something with through exercise. And then you can teach that exercise to somebody else and they can replicate it. That's the scientific aspect of this work. And it's the same in the reflexology community and astrology community, because people will say that they do these certain things and they'll say that they're offering this particular type of service or experience. And meanwhile, they're half-assing the pieces. They've read a book, they've maybe taken a class here or there, but they haven't studied the work. They haven't gotten into the roots of the practice. Mm-hmm. And that's not to discourage anybody from dabbling, but it is to understand, like, if you're going to adopt this work, make sure that you do have the roots solid before you extend the branches and really create that foundational understanding so that you don't come off looking like you're full of crap, and that you don't add to the stereotypes, because it's not just you who's stepping up to the plate. It's all of us collectively as a community.
That's right. Right. And when you're out there talking out your ass, you're discrediting people like you who are legit and know your shit and are teaching other people. Sam, I did not know what to expect from this conversation, and I am completely blown away by you. I'm completely blown away by your wealth of knowledge. And you've really opened up my mind to so many things. I'm just, you're just spectacular. And I can't believe we've not met. Like, how is that even possible? You're going to come here as soon as they do another Temple Fest. You're coming.
I'll be actually coming up in a couple weeks for a special project. So I'll be up here soon. And if you'd like to swing by, just let me know. I'll be staying at the temple.
Are you staying at the temple? Are you staying in the little house at the temple?
Yeah, the cottage.
Oh my God, you're staying in the cottage.
Yeah.
Okay. You have to send me a message when you're going to be there.
Sure.
And I will come over and we will drink wine out of mugs.
Cool.
It would be provided Christopher and Steve
the
and
powers
Adam,
that be, right? Of course.
The powers that be, provided there's enough time. But that would be the most fun ever for me. So I'm going to crash your party. That's all.
Yeah.
I'm totally going to crash. Okay. So we're almost out of time.
Okay.
So I've got to ask you my final question that I ask all of my guests. As a kitchen witch, me, if you were to have me make a meal for you in my kitchen witchy way, what would it be and why? And I know you said you have some digestional stuff.
Yeah.
So I do too. Yeah. We got a lot of tummy issues. So I'm really good at figuring out stuff to fit your dietary needs. So tell me, what would it be and why?
So preface this by saying, like, as a double Cancer, if I'm going to eat, I'm going to eat. Ain't nothing get in the way of me and good food.
Okay.
And I love that because food doesn't stop me anymore. It used to, but now I have the tools in order to remediate ahead of time and kind of self-care afterwards. So if I'm going to have my feel-good food, it's got to be a pot pie.
Oh,
absolutely. Just all the good veg, nice creamy sauce, flaky but buttery and slightly crunchy crust, and just all of the feel goodness of that. That's gonna be my go-to.
Do you like your pot pie with chicken?
Yes.
Chicken pot pie. Okay. Now, do you like it with a top crust and a bottom crust, or just top crust?
Top and bottom. The more carbs, the better.
I agree. I love crust. I'm that person that at Thanksgiving, I'm like eating off just the crust. And I know other people that are like, oh, I don't like it. Like, what? And I'm gluten-free. So I have come up with a bunch of gluten-free crust recipes that are freaking great.
Gotta have a good crust, gotta have a good sauce. And that's with any dish, period. Like, the texture's got to be there. You got to have that crunch, and then it has to be in some sort of sauce.
I used to love pot pie when I was a kid. My husband hates it. Like, I know. I think we have very different, like, there are certain dishes that we have completely different experiences with. Like, I love eggplant Parmesan. He hates it because growing up, this was the family recipe, and he's never gotten over it. Yeah. You know, and like, there's pretty much nothing I won't eat now. I was a kid that didn't eat anything. Like, I would eat hamburgers and spaghetti and nothing could touch on the plate. And now I make my living making food. So I don't really know what happened there. But I used to love chicken pot pie. And I remember my mom used to make it like so ghetto, right? She'd make it with the Bisquick, and she'd make biscuits out of the Bisquick and put it on top. And you would just get a spoonful and you're just like, this is just, it looks like vomit, but it tastes delicious.
It's so good.
It's so good. It's so good. Okay. Sam Belyea, you're amazing. Tell us all where we can find you online. As I said before, I've been following your daily horoscopes on Facebook. I can be super honest. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know what you mean by this, but I'm gonna keep my eyes open.
There you go.
So tell us where we can find you on Facebook, Instagram, all over, and where we can get in touch with you if we want to.
Sure. So my website is just my first and last name.com. So sambelyea.com, Belyea. And then on Instagram, it's sambelyea333. On Facebook, it's just sam.belyea. So just search the name and it should come up relatively easily. And that's on the website. If you go there and you click the appointments page on each of the services pages, whether you're coming to me for astrology or tarot, or if you're local or kind of visiting Florida and you want to come in for an in-person session, there's always contact forms that you can send to me with session requests.
Amazing. Amazing. Yeah. I think that I'm going to have to book a session because, again, you blew my mind a little bit, and I'm going to have to know more. So we'll also put all of your show notes
Sure.
on this episode, so people will be able to click and find you and book an appointment. And everybody should book an appointment, because who doesn't want to know more about themselves and become more aware and improve their lives. And then the recipe that I come up with for you will also be posted there. So you can make it, fans can make it.
What?
Yeah. So I'm going to come up with a recipe specifically inspired by you in this conversation. And I'm going to post that recipe on the site, and everybody can have access to it. So you can make it and I can make it, and we can make it together and eat over Zoom and be like, this is fucking delicious. Like,
Oh God,
that's what's gonna happen.
I love it.
I love it. It's so much fun.
Call it something like super cheeky too, like roots and branches pot pie, or like stars and stones pot pie, or something like really kitschy like that.
Oh, I have to name it for you.
You do. You totally do. Like, let it be canon. Let it be canon.
Let it be
is
canon.
Named after the podcast.
I'm gonna have to name it something like the yay pie or something. You know, paella. That's what I'm gonna have to. Paella. This is gonna be, and people are gonna be like, "That's not paella." I'm like, "No, it's paella." Yeah, because Belyea, like that's.
You had to have been there. You just had
you had to be there. You don't get it. You don't get it. It's fine. Oh my God, you're fucking fantastic. I heart you so big. Can we be best friends?
Of course.
Oh my God. Okay, cool. Okay, so Sam Belyea, everybody check him out online. Check out his book and the new book coming forward when it's published. He'll let us all know. Yes. Mm-hmm. And maybe we'll have you back on the show when the book comes out so we could talk about it and promote it. Until next time, my friends, I wish you all so much gratitude and many, many blessings. Thanks for listening.